So Fine Gael wants you to fight as part of an EU army. I mean, it's not as if we haven't given the EU a lot already. I mean, we did pay 42% of Europe's bank bailout. Now Leo wants you to sacrifice your children for the sake of French and German bankers. The PESCO deal will see greater cooperation between the military forces of EU countries. PESCO stands for Permanent Structured Cooperation. It says in the PESCO deal that this is an ambitious, binding and legal framework for security and defence. All countries who sign up to this deal have to increase military spending. And no, the increase won't go to underpaid rank and file soldiers who are living on family income supplement and whose wives are forced to protest outside government buildings and barracks. This EU deal will see military spending increased to 2% of GDP, from 900 million a year to 4.5 billion a year. Now 4.5 billion could build tens of thousands of public houses. The EU even get to dictate whether or not you spend this increased military budget on things like flood defences or on military equipment. But even more sinister is the commitment to develop a European Defence Fund which would research new weapons and obviously sell them at a profit. So Leo Varadkar wants Ireland to be part of an arms industry so we can sell bombs to the Saudi Arabian government so that they can blow up kids in Yemen. Some people have said that greater cooperation between EU armies is better than NATO, but that's rubbish. The document itself doesn't counterpose PESCO to NATO. In fact, it says they want greater cooperation with NATO and will seek to synchronise their military operations. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, the mainstream parties in this country, like the Constitution because it defends the privileged position of the Catholic Church and the right to private property. In other words, it keeps the wealth of the rich in the hands of the rich. But they tend to ignore passages in the Constitution when they contradict what they want. Our Constitution says the state shall not adopt a decision taken by the European Council to establish a common defence. But does that matter to Fine Gael? No. Now there's already been a substantial amount of EU military cooperation. The EU battle groups were established in 1999 and got their first outing with operations like Operation Artemis in the Congo. The French, who had an empire that had occupied and brutalised many African countries, along with empires like the Belgian Empire, got their boots on the ground in the Congo under the cover of it being an EU operation. The cobalt mines of the Congo are vital to jet engines. 4 million people have died in the Congo since 1998 as the Belgians, the French, the British and the US store up division in order to secure those mines. Now why should ordinary working class Irish soldiers die for the interests of US or EU corporations? And why, considering the history of this country, would we take part in the new corporate colonialism? The EU is full of empires. So the idea that all these imperial powers, these empires, when they get together and stand behind the French and German bankers, that somehow they become nicer. The EU is a dysfunctional empire. If you look at the US, it's not made up of loads of states who are competing against each other, but the EU is. So while the Germans and the French might unite to exploit the people of France, Germany, but also of Greece, Spain and Ireland, they're also in strong competition with each other. Some people say that the EU has overcome nationalism, but that's not the case, because the EU serves the nationalism of the Germans and the French. The EU is an empire both internally and externally. Internally, because of neoliberalism. These right-wing policies are enshrined in EU treaties like the Lisbon Treaty and ensure that people like the workers of Ireland pay for the bailouts and failings of the bankers. And externally, the EU has intervened to bring Eastern Europe into its orbit, funding right-wing and far-right groups in the Ukraine and intervening in the Middle East alongside the American empire. And some people might say that we need a counterbalance to the US empire. But if the world is terrorised by a rabid dog, another rabid dog terrorising the world isn't a solution. Instead, we need to follow the example of the great James Connolly when he said neither king nor Kaiser he took a stand against all empires and all those who want to exploit working class people for greed and for profit and for power.